Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Hudson Institute. I'm Timothy Walton. I'm a senior fellow in Hudson's Center for Defense Concepts and Technology, and I'm really grateful that all of you have taken the time for what should be, I think, an illuminating conversation with Lieutenant General Sean Gainey, who's the commander of the US Army's Space and Missile Defense Command. Lieutenant General Gainey has had an illustrious career that started in short-range air defense, included multiple deployments and support of combat operations in the Middle East, and recently included command of the 94th Army Air Missile Defense Command, the unit responsible for air missile defense in the Indo-Pacific, and was deputy director on the Joint Staff for J8 for Force Protection before assuming command of SMDC this January. General Gainey, thank you very much for coming. And before starting, I think in terms of the heart of some of our questions, I wanted to bring up this map that shows SMDC's global responsibilities. It said that the sun never sets on SMDC, and I wanted to ask if you could start by describing how you view the responsibilities of the command and how you want to maybe accelerate its relevance for the operational missions and the R&D and testing and evaluation that's necessary for the department.
Yeah, great, Tim, and appreciate you having me here today. Anytime I get the opportunity to talk about Space and Missile Defense Command, Integrated Air Missile Defense, Army Space is always a great day. And hopefully you get to walk away with something you might have not known about the command. So SMDC, Space and Missile Defense Command, is a phenomenal command, phenomenal team. The command we serve as the Army component command for NORTHCOM, SpaceCom, and STRATCOM. So just that alone is a Herculean effort. And then you add in the providing training ready forces with our 1st Space Brigade, providing forces directly to US Army US Space Command, and our ability to provide training ready forces through our 100th Missile Defense Brigade, which is responsible for the GBIs in support of NORTHCOM, protecting the homeland against intercontinental ballistic missiles. And we also, little known fact is, we also own the Army astronaut detachment, where we have 2 astronauts. Well, we have 3 astronauts. One of the astronauts moved out to command, actually, Kwajalein Atoll. I also serve as the senior commander for Kwajalein and Fort Greely. So as you can see, the breadth and depth of this command across the globe and the number of assets, either doing a space or a missile defense mission set, truly incredible. And I think that map helps illustrate that. Also, another hat I wear is the commander of the Joint Force Functional Component Command for Integrated Missile Defense for the Joint Force. So essentially, in that hat, we assist in driving joint integrated air missile defense education training, and we serve as the trans-regional missile defense element under Space Command. So again, a lot of varying different duties across the command that we're really excited about.
Thanks, General. Wanted to start on the topic of space. Last year, the Joint Tactical Ground Station mission was transferred from the Army to the Space Force. So I wanted to ask if you could start by describing some of the roles of the 1st Space Brigade in the Army, and to be frank, why not transfer all these capabilities to the Space Force?
Okay, and thanks for that question, because that's a question that I'm often asked. Why Army Space, and why do we have Army Space, especially in the growth of the Space Force and other entities in space? Well, as you can imagine, with today's technology, almost majority of our capability are reliant on space-based assets, and having that ability organic within the Army is not a luxury, it's critical to have. And from a terrestrial base where, all things in space start and end on the ground, the Army has to have that capability to ensure we can operate in a degraded, denied type of environment. And those capabilities that are resident inside of our Army Space Forces allow our Army to be able to continue long-range precision fires, continue to communicate in a contested environment, and also impact our adversaries' capability. So space is critical, and it's critical to have it inside of our Army. Actually, we don't have enough inside of the Army. So if you look at the 1st Space Brigade that's inside of Space and Missile Defense Command, it's not the only Army capabilities, but it's the majority of the capabilities and some of the most critical, which is our space control planning teams only reside in our 1st Space Brigade. And that capability really helps drive the space fires of our actual capabilities and systems out there. So the planning team is very critical and only resident inside of the 1st Space Brigade. Also, 1st Space Brigade has our space capabilities and our space planners in programs of record, more of a static type capability, but also we've introduced a lot of prototyping, leveraging RTD&E funding to leverage small form factors inside of that brigade. So I have the luxury inside of my command of taking S&T work with my tech center, and I forgot to highlight the tech center in the school earlier, but our tech center works with RTD&E, looking at S&T projects that from the gap analysis of our command and other commands, frankly, and look at how can they, from an S&T, work closely with industry to bring that capability to bear in prototyping. So we're able to take from my Center of Excellence a gap analysis, what we require for the current fight and a future fight, work directly with our tech center to do S&T work with the industry to bring those capabilities to our 1st Space Brigade, and our 1st Space Brigade can take it out, test it operationally in an operational setting, get feedback, learn, provide it back to our Army capability managers that are inside of our Center of Excellence, and then work directly with the PM to improve that capability. So having all that capability and then being able to leverage the 1st Space Brigade to be able to do that. Now, again, 1st Space Brigade is not the only Army space capability out there. We've infused space capability inside of our multi-domain task forces. So each multi-domain task force, and there's going to eventually be 5 of those, has Army space capability inside of the multi-domain effects battalion, where they're fielding more and more capability to be able to do more in support of the Army that's located under the COCOMs, the Army Service Component Commands, under to provide those space capabilities directly to the warfighter.
That's really insightful, and I wanted to follow up a little bit by remember a quote that Secretary of the Air Force Frank Kendall has encouraged or directed the Space Force to focus more on generating terrestrial effects in addition to maybe on-orbit effects. And it makes me think about what's an appropriate, in your mind, framework for division of labor, maybe, right? Or maybe there's, in some cases, there's appropriate duplication because we want there to be redundancy in the force, but maybe the Navy and naval forces and Army forces and Air forces have their localized generation of space control capabilities and space situational awareness, while the Space Force focuses maybe on more universal level coverage? Or how are you viewing this evolve moving forward?
I think you answered it appropriately, very well. And that's really how it's happening now. The Army elements, because of our relationship with US Space Command, and we have assigned forces to US Space Command. Space Command provides that broader look, but with its assigned forces from the Army and the Space Force, it's able to optimize the employment. So in some cases, for the Army, yes, we're able to focus locally with our infusion of capability inside of the multi-domain task forces. So for example, 1st MDTF supporting United States Army Pacific can provide direct support to that element, while my 1st Space Brigade providing capability as an assigned force to SpaceCom. The SpaceCom commander now has the ability to look globally and leverage our Army space capabilities, EUCOM, INDOPACOM, and Space Force capabilities, which are similar, same way. And also the Marines are fielding capability inside of their formations to support more of a localized fight for the Marines, indirect support of their forces. But we have the one thing I'm really proud of from the space capabilities is the partnership that we work so closely together, not only amongst the services, but internationally too. We work very closely with the UK. I have a LNO in the UK right now working with their space to help them build their space capabilities. We're looking to pull L&Os inside of our organization. So the division of labor is wide, but also if you look across the joint force, the Marines come to our schoolhouse, get trained at our schoolhouse, and then eventually have served duty on some of our deployed capabilities as they learn and fill their capabilities. So array, some localized and some leveraged globally through, and that's the goodness of having US Space Command.
Thank you. I had another maybe slightly counterintuitive question of dropping from space to high altitude. What we saw last month in the Valiant Shield exercise, the Army was flying some steerable stratospheric balloons. It's an interesting capability space for the Army. Why is SMDC, I think, led a lot of the R&D in this area?
Yeah, SMDC is actually the proponent for the Army's high altitude platforms. And you know, you're probably visually seeing it through some of our smaller balloons to be able to leverage it. And really the purpose of that is, you know, I've always been a fan of balloons that can provide over-the-horizon support in a missile defense perspective. Some of you may remember the JLENS program that was actually a really good capability that could provide over-the-horizon detection and fire control data to our systems. Well, if you look at platforms and space capabilities, and it's really not so much but it's the package that you can put on the platform to allow the commanders to extend their mission command capabilities, to extend their over-horizon visualization. And so doing it with a low-cost balloon that you can proliferate is exciting. And with SMDC being a proponent and having the ability to leverage partners like USASOC has been a great partnership. And you know, General Braga at USASOC has employed it with working closely with our capability developers and working with industry to be able to really test it out and find out what's the best platform we want to leverage and move forward with. And again, it may not be a balloon in the future, because when I say high altitude platforms, it could be a drone type capability, fixed wing type capability that can loiter for an extended time. So we're keeping an open aperture as we work with industry to find out what's the best capability out there, and then leveraging the multi-domain task force, which actually have a high altitude element inside of their formations, and USASOC to test out what's the right capability to actually eventually field as a program of record, or maybe not as a program of record, just field it and dispose of it and find something new and keep moving forward in a new paradigm of acquisition.
Oh, thank you. And I think it's a really promising approach, just because it seems like SMDC in many ways is riding on the coattails of the commercial industry. Right? We saw Google's Project Loon, and then DARPA helped mature that effort for the steerable stratospheric balloons. And then also in some of the other high altitude pseudo-satellite space, we see you know, Airbus Zephyr programs, and there's that HAPS high altitude pseudo-satellite alliance. So it's an opportunity, I think, where the Army can leverage some of this and then think through what are the appropriate payloads to integrate. Another area I wanted to pivot to is, I think, near and dear to your heart, air and missile defense.
Yes.
Last few years, we've seen these enormous salvos of weapons being launched in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and in many cases being defeated, including some against US forces in the Middle East. What trends are you drawing from this in terms of either changes to tactics, techniques, and procedures, or capability development or integration?
Yeah, so over the last 3 years, I've had the opportunity to really look at this problem set in incredible detail. Because the last 3 years I've worked as the director of the Joint Counter-UAS Office, you know, helping the department develop capabilities to defeat drones, but also on the Army staff, I worked in an area called DAMO Fires, which has responsibility for all Army integrated air missile defense systems. And in my current role as the SMDC commander, yes, we have the strategic missile defense forces with the GBIs, but also part of my role is to serve as the integrator for integrated air missile defense to the Chief of Staff of the Army. And in that role, I work very closely with all the stakeholders in integrated air missile, plus being a senior air defense officer in the Army. It's an inherent role that I take on and really want to drive forward. So looking at the problem, and again, I started looking at the problem closely in CENTCOM because our soldiers were under fire in CENTCOM mainly from Group 3 UASs, but also rockets, and also we had some TBMs launched at a certain point in time also. But watching the threat, and one of the things that I was able to put my arms around from that threat was the ability to launch complex salvos from tactical ballistic missiles to cruise missiles to UASs, and all at the same time in 360 degrees. And so, you know, as we were looking at this problem set, and in that role, I got a chance to move around and talk to a lot of people. And I knew from seeing it in CENTCOM that we, as an Army, and actually as a DOD, had to move towards a single C2 integrated system that could provide a 360 capability and be able to do that without leveraging multi-operators that aren't connected. And that's how we were, because that's how our systems were designed. You have a short-range system designed to do that. You have a counter cruise missile system and a TBM system. And you know, as the Army, we've been leveraging heavily on Patriot to do all of that, minus the counter-UAS. We finally developed some capability where it can handle the U.S. And so inadvertently, we put a significant strain on our Army forces by leveraging solely on the Patriot system. So now, looking at the lessons learned of complex, multi-salvo type of attacks, the lesson that was learned is what I highlighted. All systems integrated into a common C2 with the ability to leverage the appropriate effector with the appropriate sensor. So what we are doing in the Army through our modernization is we're taking what's called our Integrated Battle Command System, which is known as IBCS. So I'll refer to that moving forward, just so you understand it. And that's a fire control C2 system, which has the ability to integrate the traditional Patriot components, the radar, the launchers, but also integrate the counter cruise missile capability, launchers with the Sentinel radar, and eventually even the counter UAS capability, where the operator has the ability from his EOC to be able to leverage the sense fire control data from that element and then assign that target to the appropriate effector and employ that in a 360 degree manner. Again, not a luxury, essential that we move that way based off of what we're seeing, and you know, is to close this and really to validate our approach moving forward. I was talking to the 10th AAMDC when I was visiting in Germany, and they send a couple of colonels to Ukraine, and when they talk to the commander on the ground during one of the attacks, his comment was, the attacks came different types, heavy mass, and it came from everywhere, and they had challenges responding to it because of that. And so obviously we have to modernize, transform how we do business, and we're doing that in contact, which makes it even tough. But as we move forward to our defensive Guam system, you'll start seeing this capability employed regionally and then eventually globally as we move forward our modernization program.
Thank you. Wanted to ask a follow-up on how do we do this faster? In particular, I think we've observed in Ukraine, for instance, the importance of passive defense measures, camouflage, concealment, deception, passive and active decoys, and multispectral camouflage on the real air defense artillery units, and 5 to 10 times as many decoys for the others. So you can play the shell game. Yet, to be frank, when we look at the Army Air Defense Artillery portfolio, like the LTAMs, lower tier air missile defense system, emplacement displacement times seem to be pretty long. Some of the IFPC type systems, indirect fire protection capability units, seem to be stationary as opposed to mobile. From your perch at SMDC, how are you trying to push this shift to a more fluid and resilient air defense design that obviously requires more personnel at some level, so you can play that shell game, and but it also likely requires new requirements, right?
So, and you bring up a great point, and I'll address the first piece on how do you move faster. You know, the experience I was able to gain from working in the Joint Counter UAS office, where you have no choice but to move fast because, again, soldiers in contact, you don't have the luxury of waiting for a program of record through the acquisition timeline. You have to lay out requirements, get prototypes, and what we were able to do in the Joint Counter-UAS Office, and they're doing now, is take prototypes off the assembly line, get them to our warfighter. Now, knowing there may not be perfect, but ensuring their safety for use and have the ability to do what they're designed to do, and then get them in the hands of our soldiers. And what we continually find is our soldiers, as they iterate on the capability, they're able to provide that feedback faster to the Army capability managers and then to the actual industry, and we're able to rapidly evolve that capability. And this is exactly what we did with the Coyote interceptor. So, essentially we didn't have prior to the CENTCOM piece, when I took over, we didn't have a low-cost, high volume of counter-UAS specific interceptors, and we got the original out. We got it out there as a Block 1 type effector, and within a couple of years, we were up to Block 3 in the performance. We just saw it consistently improve over time. Also, directed energy. We've been talking about directed energy and lasers for a long time. Well, we got them into theater, and we're using them in theater, and we're learning from them. And the first system we put out in theater compared to the system we have now is vastly improved from sustainment capability, and we're now working with wattage, beam control, how to make it even better, but that starts with getting it into theater. So, we have to, and that's what we're gonna do with the integrated air and missile defense portfolio. We're gonna get it out in the field rapidly, and then start iterating and continue to improve that capability. In the IFPC counter cruise missile capability, we've already got those prototypes to 151 88 Battalion, and they're going to start getting that capability out, exercising it, and from your point of being able to move. The way we're moving with our capability in integrated air missile defense and IBCS is essentially our cruise missile capability is going to be a launcher. So that launcher can be march ordered and moved rapidly, and the disbursement of it, because it would all tie in and then leverage a sensor that's locally or a sensor in the location it's going to move to get after some of the movement and ability not to be static in one location and move around. And your last point, yes, you bring up a great point. We cannot defeat this threat with active defense alone. In missile defense, there's 3 pillars of missile defense: active defense, attack ops, and passive ops. You talked a lot about the passive ops, whether it's decoy, camouflaging. That is a significant portion of what we need to do holistically in missile defense. And you see some of our partners leveraging a lot, some of them putting up netting to be able to mitigate some of the drone warfare, leveraging decoys to add difficulty into the calculus of our adversary. But there has to be a holistic approach in the missile defeat process, from supply chain all the way through to active defense. And that's one of the roles as the commander of JIFIC IMD that I've taken on, working closely with the SpaceCom commander, and his role is in his UCP task as Trans-Regional Missile Defense, on how do we stop just focusing and admiring the active defense portion of this fight and start moving more towards the left of launch, the holistic missile defeat. We've done that in the counter-UAS fight. It started as active defense, where the Joint Counter-UAS Office and the service were working, but the Secretary of Defense said, no, we need to look holistically. SOCOM, you're going to pick up the left of launch piece, and so now you have SOCOM focused on all the way up to launch, and then the active defense piece with the services after launch, because the amount of drones, cruise missile, TBMs are just incredible. And when you saw some of the last launches and the numbers that were put out there, it's going to take a holistic, layered approach to be able to defeat those type of threats moving forward in the future.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to open up the floor to questions from our participants, so please start to consider any questions you may have. Before doing so, though, I wanted to ask you a final question on the Marshall Islands. So this March, the United States renewed its Compact of Free Association with the Republic of the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of Palau. And this seems to offer an opportunity for the Army and Department of Defense more broadly to deepen its commitment to the Marshall Islands, and then to, I think, prepare some of these critical facilities for rising sea states. What are your thoughts on how to move forward in the Marshall Islands?
Great, and you got me fired up about integrated air missile defense, and you pivoted quickly on me. I was ready to get more into missile defense, but I'm sure the crowd will get my excitement. But I'm passionate. Just as passionate about Kwajalein in the work that the command and our team is doing out there. And the reason, Kwajalein is important to Space and Missile Defense Command is the Reagan test site that we have out there and the associated radars that support the test and mission. There are, and STRATCOM is a active user of that range, because that's the only range that provides some of the ability to do what some of our customers are able to do with whether testing long-range type of capability or some of our sensing capabilities. So very strategic site. And if you look at history and back into World War II, American lives are lost fighting for Kwajalein. And so it's very key terrain inside of the Indo-PACOM AOR, and we were happy to see that happen. And I was able to talk to the ambassador a couple weeks ago, and it's great to see the ambassadors on board also. But Kwajalein Atoll is critical, and we, as the Army, has continued work to do on Kwajalein to continue to improve Kwajalein to be able to continue to support and do the critical things that we can do and should be doing on Kwajalein. And with the test range and the critical mission of the radars we have on Kwajalein, it's great to see that everything's coming together with the President signing the pact, and then our ability to continue to support and do what we do in Kwajalein. I truly believe is going to pay dividends as we move forward future, because we see a lot of opportunities in the Indo-PACOM AOR, not just focus on the Reagan test site, but other areas that as we move forward in the future, the command and Indo-PACOM will leverage moving forward.
Thank you, General. I want to open up the floor to questions. I'd ask if you could please identify yourself, your affiliation, and ask a concise question. We'll start with here in the front, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Luke Coffey, Senior Fellow here at Hudson. From your perch as the commander of Space and Missile Defense Command, has there been a single surprise from the war in Ukraine for you and missile defense and the future of this capability? And in addition to that shock or that surprise, has there been a big striking lesson learned on how we need to change the way we do business in this area? Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess I would say I feel very comfortable for my times of study where nothing really surprised me, but what intrigued me was Ukraine's ability to innovate low-cost innovation. For example, their use of acoustic sensors proliferated across their country to the point now where they're almost positively identifying drones in distance because of this acoustic, and fire teams attached to that acoustic low-cost capability that they've developed and proliferated, and and at a low-cost perspective and additive capability because the way they've employed this acoustic sensor, and as the cat and mouse game of flying drones higher, lower, faster, slower, they've been able to innovate and adapt to have a pretty good capability from the detection standpoint and a low-cost defeat. And so, one of the things, lessons learned is probably more of, the earlier that I highlighted, the ability to be able to disperse our capability 360 and be able to respond to several different threats simultaneously, and looking at it holistically, because they're making choices of whether or not to shoot certain, because there's so many, and then leveraging passive capabilities, but also looking at their capabilities, specifically their acoustic technology and their innovation in that area, and finding a way, how do we integrate that type of low-cost capability into our system? We should be able to, just because it's low cost and some of our stuff is higher cost, we should be able to find ways to work together and augment some of our capabilities with some of that lower cost capability.
Thank you. Question in the back, please.
Hey, sir, good to see you again. Mike Katona, Northrop Grumman. What do you wish IBCS could do that it doesn't do now for you?
I guess that remains to be seen, because my vision of IBCS, and again, I'm anticipating that my vision is met with what it can actually do, is that IBCS is able to ingest, as technology continues to improve from, right now, we're not talking integration of non-kinetic capability, high-power microwave capability, and directed energy capability. But my vision is that, as we move forward and as technology areas that can help us get around the cost curve maturate, it's an easy pull and push integration. So as something is becoming obsolete, as a high-cost interceptor that we may not need to rely on as much, now, because of the technology and directed energy, we can rapidly integrate. And it would probably be, my vision would be, and probably the area that I believe we'll have to work on, doing it rapidly. Not saying, okay, here's a new technology, now it's going to take us a year or so to integrate it. No, we need to rapidly integrate it so we can continue to move in fighting seamlessly without waiting for, how do we connect this? How long is it going to take? And my vision is that that's going to happen, and that's happening. And so, as Northrop Grumman, you kind of have the answers to the test now. So it's the rapid integration of capability as it comes on board, so it can be a truly plug-and-play type of system.
I have another question here at the front, please.
Hi, sir. Thanks for being here. Lauren Fish, L3 Harris Technologies. So you've talked a little bit about the lessons learned from Ukraine, and it's been very obvious, especially the Army has focused on the CUAS mission in the last 1 to 2 years, and in the budget cycle, there's a lot of commitment. How are you and maybe your S&T folks thinking about how that translates to Indo-PACOM and the more diverse domain environment there, the maritime environment, and the extended ranges as you incorporate?
Yeah, so that's great question. When I always highlight it is, it was relatively easy to focus on the CENTCOM AOR because that was a threat. It was in our face. We were able to get stuff out there and innovate. And the technology being used and looking at the technology in the Indo-PACOM theater and some of the things we're seeing with hypersonics, maneuverable capability, and as you highlighted, the large amount of space to cover. We believe the leveraging from the Army perspective of the IBCS network capability, and then as I highlighted, then as technology comes on board to eventually get after the more advanced stress and threats. One of the start is the LTAMS radar integration into that is a vastly improved radar compared to the current radar we have. It's going to provide a lot more capability. So as we bring in different interceptors and other types of capability designed at more of the advanced threat is how we're going to move forward, getting after the Indo-PACOM AOR. Now, remember, Indo-PACOM is a priority theater. That's why our IBCS-enabled system is going to that location, and we're going to learn a lot, like I highlighted earlier, once we put it in that theater and test it. And we're already testing it in simulations, exercises against advanced threats, and so we're already making adjustment TTPs, additions on how to leverage current capability that we have now and emerging technology to be able to fuse that together in that theater.
back, please.
Hi, sir. Meredith Roden from Janes. I had a question about the mass issue of different projectiles coming in. As you mentioned, it's heavy mass coming from everywhere. There was a JCO exercise yesterday that had scenarios where there were 40 to 50 drones coming in at once. Is that sort of the high end that you see your COCOM needing to be able to get after, or is that sort of the average of 40 to 50 drones or missiles or whatever that you see coming at once?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because one of the areas, and you're talking of the JCO demo on swarms and the industry's ability to provide capability against swarms, and that's one of the probably most significant concerns when it comes to capability develop, not only from a detection perspective, but operator overload from a C2 perspective, and then the ability to put still on target, non-kinetic on target, whatever it takes. So, you know, we as the Army have looked at technology like DE and high-powered microwave to assist in the area of large salvos. And what we're talking about, we're not talking large salvos over a long distance where you can eventually attrit it as it gets there. So when it finally gets to you, we're looking at salvos that are relatively short range distance that are coming in, attempting to overwhelm the operator. So as far as numbers, I really couldn't tell you, because it's going to vary depending on where you are. It could be raids of 6 to 10, and in some locations it could be 40. In some locations it could be, you're going to have the adversary looking at how can we mass up to hundreds on target at one time, because it's all a cat and mouse game of how can I overwhelm your defenses, and what are you able to do to respond to it. So the numbers, I believe, will vary. So I believe 40 was a good number, because if you can address 40 and you're now starting to build the components of the ability to get after more, because 40, in being able to put 40 time on target, synchronized exactly at the same time, is something difficult to do. But there's a lot of work and leverage in technology and level in our space-based capabilities to be able to do it is happening. So that was a needed demonstration. And again, we're already moving towards swarming. Again, the investment we're putting into high-powered microwave to be able to address a large number at one time at a relatively low cost per shot capability. And so hopefully we're innovating fast enough in that area. We already have 4 high-powered microwave prototypes out in an organization, and from this demonstration, and essentially that's our call to industry from an Army DoD perspective. Hey, we need help in this area. Come bring your best technology, best ways you can get after it, and let's go for it. And then if it works, and I haven't gotten a readout of that demonstration yet, but depending on what works in them out, then take it and then fund it and get it out rapidly, and then start learning in the field on making it better, as opposed to just waiting and taking long times through the acquisition process.
Question here.
Thank you. Will Harwood, I'm just here as a citizen. Just a quick question on the structure and the lanes that are sort of you're swimming in. What is your interface with the DIU? And in terms of looking at all the, and also just from your structure, are you looking at this from the perspective of the warfighter? So looking at all these domains, you're dealing with drones, you're dealing with space, and is there a way to funnel that information into the DIU, and then the Navy does the same thing, the Air Force does the same thing, and then there's able to have sort of a set of recommendations from a center of excellence that are coming forward and are able to meet those threats? Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. So if I attack it first from the Joint Counter-UAS brain, that was essentially the design for the Joint Counter-UAS. And the reason I leveraging on the counter-UAS fight is because that's touching everybody now. From the integrated air missile defense side, I think from a services perspective, we're not optimal, but we're doing better. You know, the Aegis BMD ships, integrated capability inside of those ships are doing very well at addressing the missile defense problem set. And as the Army's IBCS system, and then we find a way, and hopefully we do this through the Defense of Guam, to integrate those two together to work simultaneously. And obviously you have the Navy looking at Army interceptors, you have Army looking at Navy interceptors like the SM-6. So I think in missile defense, we're moving more there, and MDA is really that entity that's helping bringing that together. And Heath Collins right there alongside of me in Huntsville, him and I will start talking monthly on how we get there. So that's why I'm going to pivot more to the counter-UAS side, and DIU has a role in that, and they're getting funded from a SNT. So my first day on the job, some of the first entities I met was DIU and the work that they were doing with a company called Anduril at the time. And they helped us bring on Anduril. And now Anduril's fielding a lot of counter-UAS capability for SOCOM, and will eventually probably across DoD as one of the counter-UAS organizations. So yes, so the Joint Counter-UAS Office looks at it from a joint perspective of all the capabilities, and all of these capabilities that have been fielded from a joint perspective. Now, whether the service chooses to buy it and field it is on that service's prerogative, but the Joint Counter-UAS Office does that. Now, DIU used to be an entity that would bridge the customer to DoD and emerging technology that they're finding out there, which was a great asset we find, and then help get them to either the demonstrations or directly into to be able to show it. Now DIU's taken on a larger role in the counter-UAS fight, and have started to provided more funding to help assist in the process of delivering joint capability. And so DIU is being leveraged, and I think it's an incredible asset to leverage amongst the DOD. Now in SMDC, my tech center works closely with DIU from an S&T perspective, and that's our link from an SMDC perspective with DIU. Great question, thank you for that.
Here at the front.
Hi, Lieutenant General Dan Shear from Inside Defense. I had a space question. I think the other day you mentioned that a decision on the space MOS is coming soon. Can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of, is this something that would be happening in the FY26 timeframe? And how far away do you think the Army is from a space branch?
Great. Thank you for that, because I forgot to talk about that. And that's one of the exciting things that are happening inside of Space and Missile Defense Command. So right now, the way we address space experts and provide trained and ready force on space capabilities is we take soldiers from military intelligence, signal corps, and air defense, and we bring them in for about 3 years. And as you can imagine, by the time we train them up, get them on the system, they're already PCS, and then we get brand new soldiers. So we never build that expertise in their craft, in the MOS, and we don't build that professional non-commissioned officer corps. Now we've addressed it from the officers with the functional area. So we have functional area 40, where our officers transfer out of a basic branch into a functional area, and so you're able to build space professionals through the ranks. So what we've done is, we've looked across those 3 branches that are providing soldiers to support our space capabilities and our space assigned areas, and we're put a proposal through the Chief of Staff of the Army and the Secretary of the Army to turn that into a space MOS. And right now, that proposal is with the Army G1, and the Army G1 is packaging that up to take it forward to the Chief of Staff of the Army and the Secretary of the Army for a decision, and we're hopeful for a positive decision. So now we'll actually have experts that are now assessed into that MOS to be experts. They'll go through AIT, build non-commissioned officers, and as you can imagine, the way we're moving forward in this multi-domain fight, you have to have the experts to be able to leverage this capability, and that is the first step in building this space branch, which would be follow on to that. So what you'll have after the MOS, you'll have space professionals as MOSs, then you'll have officers through a functional area doing the role, so soldiers, non-commissioned officers, and officers, all space expertise, and then our vision is to now make that a branch and have a space branch, and we'll move forward based on how the Army leadership wants to move forward. And again, there's a lot of things to consider when you look at the different branches. I'm a little biased because it's where I sit, and we'll see as we move forward. So,
Final question here at the front.
Morning, General. Gary Lowberg, Monterey Technologies. You spoke a lot this morning about IBCS and the importance to the IMD fight. From your seat, can you talk about how that relates to or doesn't relate to the CJAD C2 conversations? Because it seems from where I sit, all the departments have got stovepipe solutions that you may slap a J on, but not sure how you're going to get there.
and you're right. You're exactly right. And the JAD C2 concept, again, I no longer believe it's a luxury, it's a necessity, just based on what I've highlighted moving forward. And I truly believe as we move forward with the Army's Rapid Capabilities Technology Office, RICTO, being the JPO for the Defense of Guam architecture, there's incredible opportunity there because you're going to have the Army IBCS capability, and you're going to have other capability that MDA is developing basically off of some of the other services systems. So there's truly an opportunity there to build an integrated system, and I think that can be the foundation for us to start moving forward as an integrated system. And then as the JAD C2 concept moves along, to merge and be able to link into the JAD C2 concept, then to overwhelm us with data and information, and then ensuring the systems are able to process all that data and information, but being done to where regardless of the service, because if you look at what we're able to do now with IBCS, we're able to have a fighter with an AISA radar feed directly to through the IBCS network to a LTAM's Patriot launcher, enabled to be able to fire off that fire control quality data. So we're starting to do it, and so now it's just opening that aperture and being able to do it across services where you're not having to look for a cross-domain solution to do it, that maybe it's done on the forefront. And I believe that's opportunity there with our RICTO as a JPO for Defense of Guam.
General, thank you very much for joining us. Do you have
Appreciate
any
it.
final insights you want to share with us?
Yeah, no, I just appreciate the opportunity to be here. As you can tell, I'm excited about what I do. I truly enjoy what I do. Space and Missile Defense is a phenomenal organization, and what I didn't get a chance to highlight here, and if you all tune in to the Space and Missile Defense Conference, I'm sure it'll be broadcasted through some means, but I'm going to highlight our soldiers that do all the great work that I've been discussing here today, and feature some of those soldiers. And so you'll get to see a close in-depth of the mission they do day in, day, whether it's at the GBIs, the 1st Space Brigade, our astronaut detachment, Tech Center, and Center of Excellence, and our integrated air missile defense soldiers across the globe, who we ask a lot day in and day out. And I appreciate having that opportunity to highlight them, and I appreciate the time here today and talking to you about what we do at Space and Missile Defense Command. So thank you.
Thank you, General. Appreciate all of your work, and best of luck accelerating these
Great.
necessary changes in space
Thank you.
and missile defense.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Hope you have a wonderful day.